All right, we are now recording. All right, welcome to our class on editing images for the web. I'm Gara Gangolfin. I'm one of the tech team members for Athenaeum. I also have worked in IT for, I don't know, 25 years, and have done an awful lot of image editing and web production throughout the years. So hopefully I can help you all make some sense of stuff. Please understand that I'm going to start a little bit basic, so please be patient with that. And then I do want to dive into some demos and then some specific Q&A as we move toward the end of this. We, as I mentioned earlier, may have some folks joining a little later, because apparently the president is speaking, and that's, of course, very, very important. So they're waiting till that finishes up. So that's where that is. What I want to talk about today is I want to give you all some groundwork for being able to understand and manage images for the Athenaeum site and for any other website or portfolio site effectively. Alicia will also touch on this in some of her WordPress classes as well. So between the two of us, hopefully we will, she's much better at WordPress than I am, but between the two of us, hopefully we will fill in any gaps or questions you might have. Let's start with some basic digital image concepts. Digital images are made up of pixels, tiny, tiny, tiny little squares. The only thing we are concerned with, counter to this particular picture, is pixel count. We don't care about inches. Inches are for print publication. So things like PPI, which is pixels per inch, that doesn't really matter. We just care whether or not something is 300 pixels wide or 600 or 1200 or 4000. So pixels are the critical factor here when you're working, and I'll show you some, I'm going to show you 3 or 4, maybe 5 different photo editing tools and show you how to check the sizing information and what that looks like. But pixels are our big goal here. That aside, there's a number of formats for graphic files. When I first started working in tech, your choices were really JPEG, or I don't know, is it GIF or is it GIF? I call it GIF file. I could be wrong. JPG and JPEG are really the same thing. The difference between those two, a GIF file is optimized for illustration and flat saturated color images. An animated GIF file, which of course we've seen a lot of on the web, can take short video loops and represent those in a small animated file. However, most of you probably are aware that those are not super high quality, so that's not necessarily the format we'd like you to use to present video, please. A JPEG file is optimized for photos and gradations of color and shading. JPEG is what we call a lossy format, L-O-S-S-Y, and what that means is when you save a JPEG file, you're losing data because it's compressing things to make them smaller. And if you were to open and save and open and save and open and save a JPEG file over time, it would get smaller and it would get much grosser. One particular thing as we look through these images that you may see with JPEG files is you see a lot of artifacts of kind of rippling around the edges of images as the image quality goes down and down and down. A PNG file is not a lossy format. A PNG file is what they would call a lossless format. It does save all the data. It doesn't scale super well. That's a completely different world. But it does save all the data with the file. It doesn't inherently compress, and it has the ability to present a tremendously greater amount of data related to color and detail in your image. However, going down, we'll talk about file sizes in a sec. PNG files are tremendously bigger than JPEG files. And when we're talking about a website and a heavily illustrated website, which I hope everybody's websites are going to be heavily illustrated, we really would like to see a lot of photos or images or tables, graphs, whatever, breaking up sort of the wall of text. And when we're talking about a website that has multiple images on it, you want the images to be relatively small from a file size perspective, so they load quickly and don't sit there spinning and spinning and spinning while they load. Just as a quick note, the industry standard as of at least 2 or 3 years ago for page load on a website was essentially if your page doesn't load within 10 seconds, you're considered to be too slow and you're going to start losing audience if you go longer than 10 seconds. Obviously the Athenaeum itself loads that fast, but if you have 20 images on a page and they're all big, your page may be slow to load, and that's not a great thing. So our goal is to have the best compromise between a high quality image of whatever it is you're displaying and a small in file size image so that your page loads quickly, your images load quickly, and they're easy to manipulate and manage on the website. I did just on my hard drive, I took a photo, and it was a photo of my puppy because most of my photos are of my puppy. That was fairly complex, and I saved it 6 times. At full size from my camera, my pictures come out at 3,000 pixels tall by 4,000 pixels wide. That would be considered a really huge file. That never, ever, ever would you want to load a file that size onto your web page. Just a quick note, if you were to load a file that size onto your web page and display it in your page, the page formatting can make the file look much smaller, but the file size is still huge. So then you get the worst of both worlds. You get a little small picture and you get a huge page load impact on your page. So understand that straight off your phone cam, off a digital cam, those photos are much bigger than you really need for the web. However, it's great to have all that information to work with when you start processing the photos. So 3,000 by 4,000 pixels is what we started with. When I saved it as a PNG file, we had an 18.2 megabyte file, pretty big. Matter of fact, there may still be some email platforms out there that won't even accept an attachment that large. When I saved it as a high quality, best quality JPEG, it was a 3.8 megabit file, and then a medium quality, which is where you start seeing artifacts creeping in around the edge, a 2.1 megabit file. So way, way, way too big. All of those are too big. In fact, the Athenaeum site, and we'll get down to more detail on this, the Athenaeum site actually limits your individual image file uploads to 2 megabytes. And that is, to sort of manage our storage capacity and to manage our page load. So 2 megs is your max. So when I resized this image down to 800 pixels tall by 1,200 pixels wide and went through that saving sequence again of saving it as a PNG, saving it as a JPEG, saving it as a lesser quality JPEG, you can see how much smaller those files are. This is awesome that we were able to get those down to 1.3 megs or even 215K. But again, I don't personally care for the quality of a medium quality JPEG. And the best way you can do this, and remember, JPEGs lose data. The best way you can do this is to take your phone cam and save it as a JPEG at high under a different name. Save it the same starting file as a JPEG at, I think it's a 10, 8, 6, 4, etc. quality. So save it as an 8, save it as a 6, but you're not chain saving. You're starting with the same origin file and saving it at each level, and see where you start to dislike the quality of your image, and then back off one and use that image. I usually like mine saved at generally at 8 or at 6 quality, as opposed to smaller quality or lesser quality. Do those of you in this class know how to view what your file size is? Let me just really quickly, again, I'm on a Mac, so forgive me. If I go into the few photos that I uploaded to work on in this class, I can actually see the file size, 1.9 meg, 2.6, 2.9, and these three are files transferred straight over from my phone camera. They are not files that have been compressed or altered in any way. So, you know, we're looking at some pretty big files here for a starting place. And this, you'd go to, for me, it's Finder for a Windows user. It's Windows Explorer to be able to see all the data about your file and specifically the file size. In some cases, your images may display in an icon format instead of a list format. And in that case, I believe, in most cases, you can right click and get information like how big your file is, or you can change it back over to a list format and see how big your file is. But again, this is one of the big things we're looking for is a file size that's under 2 megs for anything you want to upload to the site. Questions, comments? Hopefully I haven't lost anybody. And there are chats going on. We have chat, comment, questions. It's all.
I have a question. So I'm looking at my photo album. I'm on a Mac too.
Okay.
I have no photo program except whatever's on the Mac.
That one, yeah, the iPhoto, which is actually really awesome.
Yes. Now I guess, oh, okay. So where would I go to get it into a to see the information? Yeah, that's what I see. Something like that.
All right. So I am just right clicking on the image and clicking on Get Info.
Okay.
And that's giving me the size and the total K.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right click is like the most wonderful thing. Of course, I have mine set to do right click. You may have click and hold or double click. There's different ways people have their computer set up. But on a Mac, the key is the Get Info lookup to see what size things are. All right, let's talk about ways to achieve that better file size. Let me go back to, speaking of puppies, the one you can hear squeaking in the background. When you are working with a really large file, and this is not necessarily exactly to scale, but this particular file started out at 3,000 by 4,000 pixels, and you want to make it smaller. And let's say our guidance, by the way, is not more than 1,200 pixels in any one dimension. I can resize the whole photo down to be 900 by 1,200 pixels, or I can chop a chunk out of the photo that's called cropping and size that to be 900 by 1,200. If I were trying to do a picture of my puppy on my website, I would probably choose that cropped photo as opposed to just an overall resized photo. There are times you do want to just resize because your photo is perfect as it is, or because you want a broader perspective to what you're trying to communicate. But in this particular instance, generally cropping to remove the extraneous space and detail around the edges is by far your best bet. And I will show you how to crop in a couple of different applications. You know, so you can, and actually cropping is super easy on either Android or iPhone. You can actually do it right on your phone cam as you're deciding what pictures you're going to use. And that's also, in some ways, it's even easier than the photo editing apps that are on your computer. But anyhow, decide whether you're going to resize or crop. I don't think you can actually resize on your phone cam, but you can absolutely crop and edit, do some basic editing of your image on your phone cam, and that actually works really, really well. This is what we're looking at in terms of Athenaeum site size standards for the site. We ask all the artisans to upload a profile image with their artisan profile. If you are somebody who is fairly private and you don't want to have a picture of you associated with your website, We would like to have photos because, good Lord, we have lost so much engagement throughout the pandemic. We want to make this as human and as interactive as possible. But if you really don't want a profile image, then pick some other image that represents itself nicely as an avatar for you. I don't know, a turtle, an on-tier populous badge, whatever. But that should be square and 250 by 250 pixels. That's really small in website standards. We have, and I will go back to jump out of PowerPoint real quick and over to the Athenaeum site, not Alaska Airlines, Athenaeum. This little icon thingy is in my way. And I don't want to go there. I want to go to view. All right, so when we go to look at the exhibits on the site, we have a catalog page. And our goal for this catalog page is that every image that is used as a highlight for each exhibit is the same size format. Can be absolutely different content, but we'd like them all to be, going back over here, 1300 pixels wide or 1200, 1200 is fine too, by 300 pixels tall. That will be maybe a challenge for folks depending on how they want to represent their image, because not everybody has a horizontal image. Well, she did not have a horizontal format image, so she tiled 3 images side by side to make up that horizontal format. But we'd really like things to show really consistently as opposed to sort of all over the place in terms of sizing, like this. That looks great in our catalog that, you know, it overall displays the exhibits that are out there. So this is called the featured image when you get into your WordPress page next week. And let's just dive into Adriana's, because what happens then is that becomes the banner for your page. So you kind of need a horizontal format for the banner for your page too. So having that horizontal format that then gets pulled into your image catalog on the previous page, that's why we're being really specific about the style. And if you are having problems determining how to do something in that wide horizontal format, please reach out to any one of us on the tech team, and we'll be happy to help you or come up with some solutions, whether you're going to slice something out of an image or tile some images or do something else, so that we can kind of get that format looking nice on the catalog so that it scans a little better than format with image sizing all over the place. And then finally, as I mentioned, we want everybody to have lots of images on their page. I would suggest that your images, in order to hit that 2 megabyte file size, that you have a maximum of 1200 pixels in any one direction, whether it's hit height or width. Size things down until that is the largest dimension, and you're always going to hit under 2 megabytes. And you've got plenty of detail for a web page. I'm broadcasting from an ancient little Macintosh MacBook Air, and I think I'm probably 1800 pixels wide total with my display. So a picture that's 1200 pixels tall or wide is going to be more than enough for really lovely detail on the website. Questions or comments about those sort of general standards and suggestions? Okay. So a couple more items related to site standards. One of the things we had to spend a lot of time on last year is cleaning up the image library. For those of you that haven't had an Athenaeum site before, you actually get your own image library folder that's just available to you when you log on. And in that folder, we were running into scenarios where we had lots of stuff that was named like IMG 3015, or whatever the horrible basic syntax is. for photos. Yeah, IMG 0240. That's not helpful if somebody has to come behind the fact to do a quick edit or whatever. So what we would like you to do is to rename your photos, if you can do that, with a name that starts with the year of the Athenaeum display, your name, and a first name's fine. It doesn't have to be super fancy. And then some sort of title for the image, whatever that might be. In this case, this is this name for my husband's headshot for the site, 2020 McAvaney staff photo.jpg. We'd like you to make a stab at doing that because number one, it helps us to help you from a tech support perspective if we need to change anything or support or edit anything. But number two, we had some site slowdown issues last year, and folks would not be sure whether things were uploaded, and they would re-upload the same image multiple times, and then we'd have 5 or 6 copies of a really big image on the site. And having things named this way would make it really, really clear that is the same image, and we can delete, 4 of the 5 copies that have been uploaded to your folder. In fact, that's something we're going to ask folks to do that have existing sites from last year, is to go just double check to make sure they don't have duplicates and to remove extra images if that's the case. Secondarily, this is maybe a bit of a dive into deep water, but every photo that is displayed on the web has something that is called alt text that's embedded in the code, and I'm going to show you how to set that. If for some reason somebody's got like really super slow bandwidth and it's not going to load the photo, it's going to display the alt text. But what's most important to me is we are striving to be more accessible and inclusive as a society. And alt text is what image reading, or excuse me, screen reading adaptive software does. They read the alt text for a photo as part of reading the website to somebody who may have vision impairments. So I really want to encourage folks to add alt text, and it's actually super simple. If I am in a media library, and I'm an admin, so I can see everybody's media libraries, but if I'm in a media library and I want to add alt text to a picture, then I click on the picture and I type in image of fancy, I should know what it is, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Cathedral.
Wells Cathedral.
It is Wells, thank you. Cathedral with trees and gray sky. And that gets saved then with that image. And then if somebody's using image reader software, it will actually just read that description to them as part of reading the page. So again, that's a lovely accommodation effort that you can make. And we encourage folks to do that if if you feel capable and comfortable of doing that. And it should still be there. Yep, it's saved. So it just automatically saves once you type it in. And this is what your media library will look like for your page. Although, it won't have staff photos in there, but otherwise, and you just click once and type in your alt text basic description of the image. Going back to the PowerPoint. Any questions on naming or the alt text piece before we dive into the next section? Okay. Oh, the next section is demos. Yay, demos. My dog is climbing on me right now. That makes it very hard to demo. Dog off, off, off. His middle name is Off. All right, so I am going to jump out of this and jump over to, in my case, I have 2 as a Mac user, and I'm going to go to PC user in just a minute. As a Mac user, I have 2 native, no extra charge options for editing images. I also have Photoshop, which I pay for because I love Photoshop, but I have 2 basic pieces of software. I have iPhoto, which is the basic photo storage and I mean, obviously I have just super fascinating photos here, guys. It is the basic photo storage for photos on a Mac. And so I can go to my photo. I can hit edit for my photo. It really drives me nuts that Zoom wants to hover over my most important pieces. I have the ability to crop. We talked about cropping. And I have the ability to adjust my photo. So in this case, you know, it looks really dippy having my husband's paddle in the center of the photo. Also, in this particular case, my horizon is a little off true. Now, you're not necessarily going to be taking landscape shots like this, but if I'm in iPhoto, I can say, oh, wrong direction. I can change my horizon so that it is true. And then I can crop. I can either enlarge my photo, and by the way, pixels, can you guys see those pixels? Is anybody who can't see the pixels? I can also just drag the corners to crop things. And unless you're doing your profile picture or your banner picture, it really doesn't matter whether or not you're maintaining that size ratio. Although just a quick note, if you're an Instagrammer, square is fabulous. You just set it to square and there you go. Because, you know, Instagram likes square photos. One other good trick here for this is if I wanted to maintain my aspect ratio, in other words, the height to width ratio, let me make sure this does this here. I can shift and drag it and it keeps things in that exact same ratio. So you can see my arrow is not entirely matched up with my my crop area. Then I can just drag the crop area. Come on. There. Then I can drag this back to the center. So again, you can just move things freeform, or you can use the shift drag to keep things exactly in proportion. So that is iPhoto. iPhoto also gives you some basic abilities to adjust your image. Actually, not so basic. They're pretty cool. You've got almost every photo editing software has an auto enhance. Auto enhance, what does that do? It just adds some brightness. Am I okay with that? Maybe, but maybe I want to play around. I will tell you that if I'm going to play around with the photo, the three things I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust exposure depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. I am going to adjust contrast because increasing contrast quite often makes a photo look more vivid, especially if it's going to be displayed fairly small. And I will also adjust color saturation. Sometimes it's nice to nudge the color a little bit brighter. Sometimes it's not. So, but I will adjust color saturation. So those are the three things that I will always look at is exposure, contrast, and color saturation. If your photo doesn't make you happy as it is. iPhoto has built-in filters, so you can make things warm. Ooh, that looks bad. Or cool, that looks cold. Or you can make them black and white, or even dramatic black and white. I don't use filters very much. I prefer to actually, let me go back to original, excuse me. I prefer to actually adjust. And if I really wanted something to not be as warm as it is, there is a warm cold, where is it? White balance curves level, color options, there we are. I can drag the color cast to change it to warm or to cold. So that's iPhoto. That again is the native application that all photos taken on an Apple device are stored in, both on your camera and on your computer. If I were to export one of those photos out, I would then be opening it in Apple's basic preview application. So let's do that. Now we are open in preview, and we are at St. Mark's, I believe. And I don't know if that's St. Mark's or not. It's definitely Italy, but anyway. So I am in the preview application now instead of in the iPhoto application. Preview from Macs is the tool that they use to manage PDF files, really. But in this particular instance, Preview also gives me the ability to do some additional editing for photo, though not as much as iPhoto does. The one thing it does do, iPhoto doesn't give me the ability to resize a photo overall. I can crop, but if it's still like 2000 pixels wide, I can't actually change that in iPhoto. So I come here to preview and I adjust the size. And again, inches. We don't want inches, we want pixels. That's a lot of pixels. So I'm going to just say that I want this to be 1200. It will adjust and it will make it smaller. Doesn't mean you can't look at it larger and still maintain quite a bit of quality. It's just that you do need to adjust that sizing. In preview, I believe, I can also do a little bit of editing like color, but this is really not a great application for that. It's much better in iPhoto. So that's what we've got. I'll come back to Photoshop later because Photoshop is something that we pay for, and I don't want to tell anybody that they need to buy an application to do really nice work for Athenaeum. But I do want to encourage people to play with what you've got, to learn to crop, to learn to resize, and potentially to learn to manage exposure and color quality if you need to have the best possible images on the web. There's lots more things you can do with image editing, but those are the three probably most important to presenting a good picture. I'm going to unshare and I'm going to move over to my husband's computer and share there and show you the PC tools. All right. Can I share? I think I can share. This is so difficult.
Permissions to share.
Everybody has permissions to share. There we are. Share. My husband has a touch screen. That's super cool. That makes me happy. All right. In the, and you're Windows 10, right, honey?
Correct.
Okay. In Windows 10, and I just jumped out of that photo, sorry. In Windows 10, the photo store is literally under photos. And if you're syncing your phone camera with your computer, this is where they would show up as under photos. So you're going to bring a photo open, and obviously we've been working on Athenaeum staff pictures. Let me just grab one of those. Hello, Mistress Kyrie. In the photo application, it's not really quite as cool as, am I sharing, by the way? Yeah, I'm sharing. Okay. I could look on my other computer and that would be good. In the photo application, on the native photo application on a PC, the editing capabilities are not quite as fancy. I do have the ability to crop. That's what this little symbol means, by the way, is crop. I have the ability to rotate. Can I rotate? Yeah, this doesn't give me fine-tuned rotation, just large rotation. And then I have the ability to edit. And in editing, I only have the ability to do minor adjustments. But again, they're the ones we talked about, right? I have the ability to manage the light to dark. I have the ability to manage for more color or less color. And they have something here in their editing tool that's pretty cool called Vignette, which gives you the ability to kind of dim the outsides of your picture and bring the center of the picture into focus, which is kind of nice, especially if you're doing things where you really want, you know, you've got a specific piece of pottery or a specific piece of weaving that you really want to focus on. The Vignette piece can gray out anything that's in the background and give you good content there. That is, there may be other photo editing tools on the PC that are native, like I believe, don't they still have Microsoft Paint?
Yes.
All right, let's bring up Microsoft Paint because that's a blast from the past. You don't have Microsoft Paint.
It's in Windows accessories.
Windows accessories. Microsoft Paint, there we are. So I can actually open images in Paint as well, and I have a few more options for editing once I'm in this particular application. So I can, and that's Photoshop, I want Paint back. I can open a file. See if we can find an image file somewhere. Athenaeum. Now we're going to pick on Erin because Erin's awesome. And I'm going to make this much bigger, so big you can see the pixels. And again, in this particular application, you have the ability to, if I go back to File, I can export to a different file format. In Home, I should be able to resize. So I can resize things so that it's either by percentage or by pixels. We're always going to choose pixels here. So I could resize this down to even smaller if I chose to. And I can, if in this particular instance, I have to, I didn't want to do that. Let's see, Control Z. All right. Where is my pointer? I want to be able to show crop. Oh, select. I want to go to select. That's what I want to do. So rectangular selection. I want a rectangular select there. I can now select crop again, that same little symbol. And there you are. You've cropped your photo and it's even smaller in whatever dimension and even more focused in this case on Erin's fabulous color and hair. So Microsoft Paint and the native Macintosh options. Any questions on either of those before I jump into Photoshop? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unshare because we're going to use Photoshop on the Mac. Thank you. All right. In Photoshop, which I really enjoy, Photoshop is really expensive if you want to buy it outright. You can subscribe to Photoshop now, and you still get to download the software. You can subscribe to Photoshop for about $30 a month with no long-term contract. So if you have, like, for instance, a specific website to get ready for, it's 2 months out, you can subscribe to it for 2 months, you haven't spent a fortune, and then you can uninstall it. But you have to be pretty motivated to want to do some fairly advanced work on photos to do that. So in this instance, oh, I don't know, let's go back to puppy ears somewhere. Come on. Okay, file open. What do I have? Pictures. I have a lot of movies. What is that? Hopefully that's not embarrassing. I have no idea what this photo is that I just opened, y'all. Oh, it's just me hiking. There we go. So I am in Photoshop now, which is a bit of a learning curve. There's a lot of great tutorial stuff out there. I can from the start, I can manage image size. So I can go in here and see that I'm, again, 3000 by 4000 pixels, and I can size that down so that it's 1200 pixels at the largest dimension. I can also do a rectangular selection and just give you a really cute puppy. Cut myself out of that whole picture. And I can then image crop. And then I can, if I choose to, go ahead and adjust this. Photoshop, like most applications, has the ability to automatically tune things up how it thinks it should be tuned up. So I could tune this up. That didn't change much. Image contrast. That didn't change much. I may have already done this. Ah, there. It changed the color. It darkened the color, which was kind of interesting. Or I could go into doing things by hand, which is a bit of a pain in the butt. But if you want really finite control and are willing to sit through some tutorials on this, you absolutely can change things so that you are managing the brightness of your photo, or more important to me, the contrast of my photo. Look, I now have a black dog. So that is the resize, the contrast management, and then of course the color management. I tend to go to hue and saturation, and I can make things brighter. That's Technicolor. Or I can make the monochrome if I need to adjust color. I can also change the cast and make things warmer or colder or completely weird. But generally, you're just going to nudge it a tiny bit warm or a tiny bit cold if you need to correct for weird lighting when you take your picture. But those are just the basics for actually getting your photos to where you want them to be to upload them onto an Athenaeum site. I understand that I have not been doing artisan type pictures because I don't actually have a whole lot of those. I appear to take pictures of hikes and puppies, and that's about it. Any questions on these basic tools that I've demoed today? You guys are super quiet.
We're absorbing everything you just said.
Okay. If you have specific questions or challenges, you absolutely can reach out to me. I'm happy to walk you through using something or solving a particular graphics problem. So I'm great with that. But tell me, in terms of putting images on your web page, what you perceive to be your challenges and what you're trying to accomplish. Not you specifically, but everybody.
I think at this point, I'm still trying to decide what images I want to put out, what kind of a story do I want to tell. So those questions for me are actually bigger than managing the images.
Okay.
But this is still helpful so that I don't break the website.
That's cool. That is true. I do want to come back around to talking about releases and waivers, and the story you wanted to tell really triggered a thought for me on this. But let's talk about releases and waivers and then come back to that. There are two different types of releases that we ask. I'm not sharing. It's a great PowerPoint slide, but I'm not sharing it. Let me come back and share that. Zoom meeting. Thank you, Kit. All right. Let's go to here. All right, there are two types of release forms. One is a grant of use form, and that we need from everybody who is uploading their own photos. We need to have a release from that artist to use their original content on a Barony of Madrona official SCA site. And we have these forms available for download on the Athenaeum site, and I will point everybody to those separately. But we need to have that grant of use form so that even though you're uploading these photos yourself, you're uploading it to a Madrona site. So we just need to have that form in the background. If you have photos or artwork that was done by somebody else contemporary, we need to get a photo release from them. For example, I used a really fantastic fencing photo for a SCA site brochure kind of thing that I did. And so I reached out, ended up being somebody in Wastekeep had taken the photo. So I got a photo release form from him. It's just sitting in a file in our webministers files. And we're covered in case there's some questions or issues about the use of that particular photo. One of the questions that came up about the grant of use form a couple of days ago, and the excellent Mr. Strandberg asked this question. If you are providing photos that are from old out of print books or from other sources, do you need a photo release form or do you need a citation? If it is something that is original artwork or content that is contemporary, you need a photo release form. If it is, like a screen grab from a PDF on the Gutenberg project of a book that was published in 1920, then you're going to cite it. You're not going to ask for a photo release form. So a citation is for an academic reference for something that's published in the public domain. But if it's an original or private content, artwork, or photos, then we need that photo release form. You can use just one photo release form for all the photos you contribute. You don't need to have one per thing. But if you are putting photos on the site that other people have taken, it would be really helpful if we can get those photo release forms from you. And we're actually storing them in a place on the site that doesn't display, so that we just keep track of those. The other thing that we need is if you are taking pictures of people or just showing pictures of people, we in some cases need a model release form from the object of that photo. It's actually a far more limited requirement than most people think. If the photo is clearly a portrait style photo, it is a head and shoulders headshot kind of thing, yes, we need a model release form because that person's features are clear. If the photo is taken at a private event or in private space, we need a release form. But if that photo was taken at a public event or demo, if that photo was taken in a public park or a fairground or whatever, and it is not clearly a head and shoulders shot, we don't need a model release form. If you've got a picture of two fighters fighting, can't see their faces, it's in a public park, we don't need a model release form. That picture I was editing a little bit ago with me and the dog in a public park, it's not a portrait and it's in a public space. You would not need a model release form to actually display a photo, if you had somebody in garb standing in a public park in that instance. But we do need to collect these. We actually have a checklist when you publish your exhibit page, and releases and waivers is one of them. Her Ladyship Aurora, and she may or may not be on this call, is our release coordinator. And she's going to be making sure that everybody has releases on file for the photos for their pages. She wanted to be called our bounty hunter, our Mandalorian for this purpose. So that's her job. Back to this thing about story. And this is maybe a bit of a side tangent, but many, many years ago, somebody encouraged me to display photos of myself in a way that has been profound and has stuck with me. She suggested that as we look at photos of ourselves or our peers, we're not looking for belly bulges or double chins or blemishes or bad hair days. At the end of the day, what we're looking for is the story your photo tells. So as you are curating the photos, whether they are of objects or of people for your site, to Halima's point, think about the story your photo tells, as opposed to getting hung up about nitpicky details that maybe you would be the only one who would notice or care about. Think about the story first, the narrative of your of your exhibit. All right, any other questions, comments?
Yes, I have one. It's in regards to taking my image, and do I want to put text onto the image to describe what it is, or do I want to put text outside the image on the page to describe what it is? What's a better way or a preference?
It's totally up to you how you do it. I will show you though, back to this Athenaeum display that I'm not sharing again. Let me share again. I seem to be having a challenge with that concept right now. But sharing screen is not a psychic occasion. All right, so back to this. I can actually type a caption. So I'm going to just caption this fancy castle. And then theoretically, if I pull that castle into a page, so let me go back to an exhibit page and pull that in. All right, oh, hey, we have a dog. And I actually use that caption section, and it actually imprinted the caption over the bottom of my photo. I'm going to pull that out, put a different photo in, that one we just captioned with Fancy Castle. Insert gallery, and the caption's right there. So if you do want to, have a caption for your photos, the site does it for you really simply and easily, like this. Whether or not you want to do that is up to you. You may want to have a paragraph description instead, but that capability is readily available to you.
Thank you.
Awesome. What other questions do we have?
Do you have any information about putting videos?
Oh, yes, thank you. We would first encourage people to do video. There are so many things we do that are so much better related through use of video than they are through still photos. We would rather not actually host the video ourselves on the Athenaeum site. What we would prefer you do is actually upload the video to YouTube, and then YouTube gives you a link that you can use to embed that video in the site. If you do not have access to YouTube yourself, you don't have your own account and have no interest in having one, the Barony has a YouTube account, and we would be happy to host your video there and embed it on the site. And part of the reason for that is it just offloads the file size and processing requirement to stream video to YouTube as a provider, as opposed to running it off our own site. But it also gives you the ability to share it in other formats as well if you choose to. So yes, we would love you to use video. We'd prefer you to host on YouTube. If you have huge reservations about that, contact us, we'll talk. You certainly can upload it and host it here, but YouTube may be a better option for you. I am not addressing video editing at all in this particular conversation today, because I'm not a video editor. Mr. Serwena is actually really good at editing video. But what I would encourage you, if you're considering doing video, make sure you have the ability, either yourself or somebody else. Again, if you're a Mac user, iMovie is free. I don't know if Mac has, or PC has a free version of something or not. But to curate and edit your video so that you're at least putting name and credits on that video, and potentially cropping it and shrinking it, because most video that folks take could benefit by shrinking some of the less active sections out of it. So definitely do video, definitely consider editing it if you have the capability and the interest in figuring out how to do so.
All right, thank you.
What else do we have? Oh, hey, Kit just found a video editor on Windows 10. So, and it's a twin to the Photos interface. So that's pretty awesome. I don't know anything about the PC video editor tool. But if you would like assistance, I'm sure that somebody on our tech team would be willing to dive in and figure it out with you. Was that Morgana asking about video? Because you do great live video already. So you're a pro at that piece.
Oh, thank you.
All right, other questions? All right, I think that's it. I think we're done a bit early. Please do feel free to contact us on the website, on Facebook, or by email. We're Athenaeum@baronnevemadrona.net. If you have further questions or very specific questions once you start diving into actually formatting and working with your images, we're definitely happy to help. We want you to have the best experience from a technical execution perspective and from a being happy with the product perspective as you go forward with Athenaeum this year. And just as a plug, you are going to have your pages available to you on Saturday. We tested them this last weekend, Alicia and I, and the process worked really, really well. So I'm going to you're going to have your stuff available to you before bedtime Friday night, just a hint, because I'm going to do that Friday night after work, just to make sure everybody's pages are up and ready to go for Saturday. So yeah, you will have your pages available, and everyone on the team is happy to help from a tech support perspective. We may be doing some handoffs, and you'll find that the Artists of Athenaeum group also is a huge help with some of the common issues or questions you may encounter with creating your page.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate all the support.
Awesome. Thank you. We really appreciate you doing this. I mean, this is why we do it. It's a pleasure. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Gara. I will probably ping you